Hello and welcome to the Game Dev. I just screwed that up, didn't I? Hello and welcome to the Game Dev Local Podcast. And I am your host, Oscar Clark, with the founder and creator and the guy who's driving force behind Game Dev Local, Stuart DeVille. And we are going to try to make this part of a new regular process where we pick up a topic of the week or a topic of the time and try to debate both sides of it. Stuart, do you want to tell people a little bit about yourself and what you're currently up to?
Yeah, I'll try to keep it short and sweet because hopefully you're a fan of the podcast and you know who we are already. But yeah, I'm Stuart DeVille, the last remaining founder of GDL. And gamedev Local is a community of developers. We've got nearly 5,000 members now, and we run events, we run this podcast, and we do a whole bunch of other stuff. And I personally also run my own studio, and I guest lecture at universities and do a whole bunch of other stuff on the side.
Exactly. And so in my podquest, Learn Everything You Want to Know About Game Dev, but Never Dared to Ask, in my various conversations, one of the topics that came up this week is I have a part-time thing which I help out the team at Pocket Gamer occasionally, and I get to talk to their editorial team. And one of the things I think you were asked similarly was our impression of Google's new project Genie. Now, I don't want to get too into this because both of us have replied to Pocket Gamer, we've given our
Mhm.
opinions, but I think there's an interesting topic kickoff that this talks about, which allows us to get back to some of the kind of wider issues that are going on in the space right now as game devs. These are factors that are going to affect all of us in some way or form. But let's start with Project Genie. So, Stuart, do you want to just sort of describe what you know about that project and what it's trying to do?
I mean, yeah. So as far as I'm concerned, it's just another incorrectly labeled. It's an AI tool for create another art creation tool for game developers that none of us asked for, but we've got anyway. And there's some debate to be had around like, well, I guess around loads of things on it, right? But what we would probably start off with is its usage and when and where it could be used, if it should be used, and if it is being used, yeah, why would we use it?
So I'm going to. I mean, first off, I hear the weariness in your tone from the very thing. Oh my God, we're got another AI challenger.
There's a lot,
However,
yeah.
I'm with you on the AI language thing, but I don't think it's for game makers. Well, that's not quite true. I
Hmm.
think someone thinks it's for game makers. Someone has seen this world creation, explore a world thing, and said, "Oh,
Right.
that's kind of cool. That's going to be for game people, isn't it?" But to your point, I don't think they asked the fundamental question is what problem is it solving?
Yeah.
And to my mind, that's the kind of flaw, but also interesting question, interesting space that this kind of generative function delivers. Because, I mean, I'll get your view on this, but my view, as I think you know, is environment art isn't just the pretty stuff.
Hmm.
To me, environment art is a form of communication of ideas. And in particular, I'm very much interested in the way architectural design, and I mean that in the widest possible sense of it, influences user experience. How we use pathways and flows, light and shapes to drive people's direction. Now,
Yeah.
an AI creating a beautiful space, great. And you know, you can argue if it's beautiful or not, that's someone else to debate.
Yeah.
But the argument is, to me, is I need something that's going to communicate ideas if it's going to be usable in a game. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, for sure. I was actually kind of going over some of this stuff with my students at Goldsmiths recently. Um, I was talking about stylized art and how and why we would apply it to our models. And with stylized art, obviously, you're you still need to understand the language of uh, yeah, the what you need to be communicating with that game asset. So I gave them a classic example of a barrel. There's barrels in games across the board, whether it's a pirate
Barrels
ship
in
or
games? Heaven
right.
forbid. Next you'll have a red barrel I can shoot at and it explodes.
Yeah, and it's obviously it's widespread. It's in a lot of fantasy games and stuff. And the one that I showed them I had instead of just like coloring it all brown and putting a couple of metal rims on it and sticking a cork in it, um, I had chosen to individually have each of the planks that are used to create the barrel
Hmm.
um, as they all have their own different wear and tear. So
Yeah.
each of the planks has been aged in different ways, and they've used spare planks to make these barrels. And that instantly tells you a story about that barrel. It's not a fresh, new, shiny, clean one. It's been made from bits and bobs of wood, and so it kind of it tells a story on its own. Um, and yeah, if you've got something like typically like the way that AI tools work is they look at all of the things that are out there and then they produce the most generic version of it. That's like obviously my humble opinion, but yeah.
I mean, but I'm going to be very, very nerdy now. There is a great YouTube channel of a cooper actually making barrels, and it is super interesting watching him actually recover older barrels and turn them into new ones. Anyway, I won't get. I mean, that's so nerdy. I'm so sorry. Please apologize. Accept my apology. But the thing you're saying there about, I mean, obviously, here is a destructive object that's going to go in an environment. Fantastic.
Hmm.
That way that gets destroyed, the way that gets drawn. In fact, it goes back to Star Wars and the fact that the ships look real because they had damage on them.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
I mean, technically, you could argue with enough time and enough training, an AI model would be able to do that. And that's okay. But would they be able to do that in a way where the position of that barrel is over, I don't know, a key, and that key is the key to the door to the shed in the background? I mean, I'm not entirely serious here, but it's
Yeah. No, I get you.
how do you do a placement of an object? How do you create a moment in the story in a space? How do you create a trigger? How do you think about the collision layers of the space? Because they're the things we don't usually see as a player. We know they're there often, but we don't necessarily understand that there's a trigger point. And you go to that particular location, that's going to trigger an action. That action could be movement of birds across the sky. It might
Hmm.
be the trigger of a sound. It might be a demon appears. I mean, there's lots of different things that we can do.
Yeah.
And again, don't get me wrong. I'm sure that somebody's going to use AI tools like this to be able to create spaces like that. But you need that to be predictable.
Yeah.
And
There's also
yeah,
so there's two things that I was thinking during that. What one is like there's also like because you mentioned lighting, like there's also a yeah, when you're painting especially if you're doing a stylized object and you're doing like a hand painted style, you
yeah,
need to always have the light coming from the exact same direction, and that's like a very important distinction for you
mhm,
because you're not relying on the environment lighting. Um, so that's like another little like niche thing that is a problem that like can AI get around that? Can it actually replicate like another stylized object that's going to be exactly the same style as the last one with the light coming in the exact same space and all of these kind of like technical details. And then the other point you're making here is like the engine, the AI tool doesn't understand level design. I mean, it's possible
no,
that you could teach level design to an AI tool, but typically a level designer um, will um, yeah, thinks about the user experience. It doesn't just go, here's a path and here's why I have that path. It actually thinks on a higher level of the player experience and how they want the player to feel, what they want the player to do. And I don't think particularly that you're going to get an AI tool or like, given infinite time, obviously all of these tools would be able to do everything. Is so goes the hype, right?
yeah, no, exactly. I'm thinking of what's the name of the guy who wrote it? Steve Swink, I think it was, writing a book on called Game Feel.
Hmm.
And it's a great book, but the thing is, it's like it's understanding the dynamics between the player being presented with a circumstance. They then communicate their intention through the interactive devices, keyboard, mouse, controller, whatever else, The computer then receiving that input, trying to translate that input against the game structures, rules, etc., and then that having an output, and that output has to be feel. So that feel can be, vibration, it can be audio, it can be visual, it can be all sorts of things. And to my mind, it's that combination of understanding the intention, the interaction consequence, and then having that presented to you in a way that you can consume it as a player. That cycle really matters. So that's how we get that sensation. And we know how difficult it is to get that sensation right. I mean, if you've played a very average racing game, you know the difference between that and I don't know, playing GT or Forza or something like that. In fact,
Mhm.
the difference between burnout style games and a GT style game, completely different beasts, I would argue. But
Yeah.
anyone coming at it from scratch would say that's just a racing game. But to my mind, what I'm trying to get to is I think that um, these tools are great for getting us to know what we want to make.
Yeah.
I don't think they're very good at being the thing we want to make currently. Will they ever be? I think that's a very long journey, a lot longer than just training an AI, personally.
Yeah, I mean, I've been having this conversation about AI quite a lot. I mean, I've
Mm,
gone through the whole, what would you call it? The through all of the emotions, like from the beginning of like AI being hitting our screens and being
yeah,
talked about, where a lot of us were just full on anti AI, and again, a
yep,
lot of that is due to the fact that it's all just being mislabeled. I think
yep,
if they hadn't have used the term AI and they'd have used the term tools or like um, tool assisted development, these kind of things, I think that it might not have hit us so hard, and we wouldn't have had this immediate painful like rejection emotion. Um,
yeah,
and I've kind of got to a point now where I can see the value in some of these tools, um, but I still find that the value solidly lies in one part of development, and that's pre-production. So
yeah,
getting out a prototype where, because like as an artist, I've worked on so many projects where that pre-production, the prototyping phase, you still have to make art, and you still have to make art that kind of is suggestive. You don't want to waste a lot of time on it, but you're still using like your creative juices to do it.
absolutely.
And then you can kind of almost like burn out in that in that prototyping phase, especially if like you've just created a whole bunch of stuff, you've thrown that away because that didn't work, and you're going a different direction. You create a whole bunch of stuff, that doesn't quite hit the mark. You've thrown that away, so you could be saving the creative energy by using AI tools to do a lot of this like early prototyping phase to get a look and a feel, like just a general vibe.
Yeah.
Much like people are using AI for coding, right? They call it vibe coding because you're kind of getting the gist of a thing,
Mm.
and then hopefully you've got enough skill yourself to like take it to the next level.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are trying to use vibe coding in anger, and some great stuff being produced incredibly quickly, particularly prototyping. But I still remain very nervous about the sustainability and the quality of the code. And I know how hard it is for a kind of like any coder to pick up somebody else's assets.
Mm,
And I don't think I've ever had a situation where a coder has said to me, that guy's code was fantastic. They always tell me how terrible everybody else's code is and how wonderful theirs is. I mean,
yeah.
don't get me wrong, I don't know, I'm not a coder. um I can just about read the human readable versions of code, maybe, but that's about as far as I get.
I mean, I have a similar thing with rigging and animating characters that I haven't rigged. If I get given a character and I'm asked to animate it, typically I'll have a look at the rig and I'll be like, okay, I can see what they've done. I can see why they've made those choices and stuff. But I'm like, the way that I like to animate and the workflow that I have, this like getting used to this rig is going to be a whole thing. It's going to be a pain. And actually, for me, 9 times out of 10, it's quicker for me to re-rig it, create my own rig for it, and then animate. And then I'm working at a speed that whoever I'm working for is happy with, rather than me
Yeah,
saying, okay, well, give me like a couple of weeks to like get used to this rig, and make it move the way I want it to move. I can literally just, I mean, I've been doing this a long time, obviously, so I can like rig and animate very quickly at this point. Um, and making a rig that works for me, it just takes what, like maybe an hour or so. So there's my options are like spend an hour making my own rig, or spend 2 weeks being like, oh, this just, and there's, no matter how much you get used to someone else's rig, you're gonna be like, oh, it just doesn't do that thing that I want it to do, and so I'm needing to find workarounds all the time. And I think, yeah, it's going to be the same for people who do programming.
Of course it is. Of course it is. I mean, so I think what this ends up being is, um, I think where I'm going, we could talk about AI. A lot of people have talked about AI in general. I think what we're
Hmm.
kind of highlighting is what we're seeing is an evolution of tools which are going to allow a lot more people to create a lot more things, and that will bring out more AI slop than ever
Hmm.
before. I'm already seeing it. I mean, I mentioned YouTube earlier. Whilst there are some great channels out there, is also an awful lot. And the moment I hear that AI voice, and I will recognize it incredibly
Yeah.
fast. In fact, and this is where it gets interesting. Whenever that phrase comes out, I know this is AI slop. I'm
Yeah.
off. I'm gone.
Yeah.
And it is going to be incredibly challenging for people to find the right things that are valuable and interesting. How do we defend ourselves from that? Do you have any views on that?
I think, well, like you say, it's really easy to spot slop, as it is now lovingly termed. And I think, for any content creator, the way that you stand out is that you learn like what your style is, what your voice is. And it's been the same for indie studios for like a really long time, right? All the big AAA studios have all kind of tried to keep up with each other, like when we're all going through the like trying to make the most hyper realistic um, games possible. All of the big players were doing that, and we saw all of the innovation in the indie teams with like super quirky art styles, super like we typically, obviously, we're looking for the cheapest and quickest way to make something, but to make it still look cool and funky. um, and I think that that's that's the actual skill of an artist. It's to show you something that you haven't seen before, or to show you something that you have seen before but in a different way that you haven't seen before. um, and yeah, the AI tools can't do that. They especially can't think outside of the box. Um, you're not going to get like, as an example, I worked on a project before where I wanted to create a different art style, and I did the hand painted thing. I did the hand painted texture, and then I took that texture and I put it into another tool where I played with the like functions and features and filters on that to change the textures that I'd made for the model, and then brought it back in engine, well, back into my modeling
Yeah.
software, so I could see how it would look in engine. And I was like, okay, it's kind of there. And then I did more tweaking there, and I was like, oh, so I've now got this process where I do a certain amount of work in this tool. I take it to this tool to get these effects that you don't get in this tool. I then bring it back, and I've got another little like tweak to make in here, and then I've got this whole new cool, funky art style. And you're just not gonna like that. Is something that you do. You think outside the box. You're like, I kind of want this look, or I kind of want this edgy thing. And as much as you can, the AI tools all rely on you being able to explain very cleanly and clearly what it is you want it to look like. And as an artist, we spend a lot of time going, I know what it looks like. I don't quite know how to explain it. And we spend a certain amount of time, yeah, playing with different software, playing with different tools, and then we get closer to it, and then we're like, ah, this is the thing. Um, and if you just ask an AI tool to do all of that for you, it can't do all of that for you.
No.
It can only look at what has come before and give you a generic output.
So I kind of have an idea of like three things that work
Hmm.
as our defenses. The first one I think kind of resonates with what you're saying about thinking out the box, and I'm going to call that vision, for want of a better phrase.
Yeah.
Vision being, I have something I want to say, and that could be about a genre, or it could be about a art style, or it could be about a philosophy, or any number of things. Something I want to say. It doesn't have to be
Hmm.
profound, but I think what humans are good at is having something which they want to hold, hang their hat on, for want of a better phrase. so vision, I think, is the first one. Second thing I think we need to think about is the storytelling. So it's kind of
Yeah.
connected to the vision, but storytelling, the thing that I think is quintessentially human. I think the thing that defines us as a species is the fact that we can use tales that allows us to communicate ideas, these visions, in pathways which can be deeply remembered and experienced. And that understanding of storytelling means that we have to understand the emotional journeys that we want people to go on, and an AI won't necessarily understand the journey. Now, don't get me wrong, AIs can be incredibly impressive. I've managed to use a tool to help me come up with inspiration for ideas for tests for the actual play that you kindly joined that I do, but it's never good at doing it to the full extent.
Yeah.
It's good at coming up with this. Oh, this is the sort of thing we know you like. Here's some things that you could explore, but I have to have read it, like you say. This thinking out the box stuff. Here's the areas. I have to guide it. I have to have a vision, and then I need to finish the storytelling, because if I don't create the storytelling, the thing that it comes up with is useless. And maybe it's a seed, but it won't grow into something useful until the player has something more substantial. So I think humans can offer that for quite a while yet. And then
Yeah.
on top of that, I think the last thing, the most important thing, which is what indie game teams have in abundance, is authenticity. And now, obviously, if you've got tons of money and you've got a big brand like a Disney, you can basically be authentic because you are the big elephant in the room.
Yeah.
You can sue people, for huge amounts of money for breaching your IP. Fine.
I would even argue that like somewhere along the way, maybe it's like inherently part of Disney, certainly like old Disney.
Mm.
Hopefully we don't get slapped with a lawsuit for what I'm about to say. But
It is
they,
opinion, if anyone's
they,
asking.
yeah, this is just my opinion. Um, they, they stole stories, and I feel like a lot of the time they were telling very generic versions of those stories.
Mm.
Um, in fact, that kind of is their USP, right? They're trying to create mass appeal,
Yeah.
and so everything that they create is watered down to a certain level so that it's offensive to no one, except the fan bases of the original content that they acquire. Um, and so, yes, I think AI probably has a similar path, right? There will be a certain amount of stuff that it can create that people will go and consume because people consume stuff, especially when you're just trying to pass time and you're bored. Um, there was this great thing that I heard about some time back now, where they did an experiment and they sat someone in a room, um, and obviously they said, you're going to take part in this experiment. Like, yeah, fine, cool. And in that room was just a chair and a table, and on the table was a red button. And they said, okay, I want you to press the red button. They pressed the red button, and oh, they got an electric shock. And they're like, oh, that was horrible. And they go, yeah. And then the person doing the test was saying, that's not the actual test. I just need to go set up some stuff, and then I'll come back, and then we'll do the actual test. And then they leave the room, and it takes about like not very long at all before the person sitting there is like, well, just wanna, and they press the button again, and it still gives them a horrible shock. So we would rather get like a short, sharp shock than be bored for any length of time. So I think that AI takes advantage of that exact thing, and that's why you get people that can
But
scroll
to an
and go
extent,
through all of
games
this.
have for years too, you could argue. I mean, I think the most games understand that you can give more and you can have more depth
Yes.
and more engagement. And actually, if you do give all that value to a player, then when they are presented with multiple, so one reason I'm biting on this, by the way, not in a biting, but a lot of people used the language around 2014. A lot of people used the language of the Skinner box when we were talking about free to play.
Hmm.
And that's the idea, very much like you're describing, where you put a pigeon or a rat in a box, and you give them a button, and if they press the button the right time, they get, food. If they press it the wrong time, they might get a shock, for
Hmm.
example.
Yeah.
There are various designs that were talked about, but as I understand it, the primary one was um, press the button to get the food. And then they played around with some variables like the number of times you had to press the button to get the food could increase. And interestingly, when you altered that button press to random,
Hmm.
the frenzy of the pigeon or the rat to press the button increased dramatically. And so people were using that as an analogy for free to play games. Surely free to play games are just Skinner boxes.
Hmm.
Except the reality is that we are presented with these processes all the time. Do this thing, get this reward. Do this thing, get this
Yeah.
reward. The reason the Skinner box worked is because it was the only way the animal could get their food. I mean, for those psychologists out there, apologies. I'm just trying to dumb it down to make it easy to understand. I know it's more complicated than that. Please forgive me. But if you think
But
of
yeah,
it
you're
that
right. Like
way,
in games, it's like that game is not the only game in town.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. We are presented with thousands of operant conditioning mechanisms. And of course, when we have freedom to choose which source of pleasure we will get, they don't really have the same impact, I would argue.
Yeah.
Um, and also, the other thing is that we have the chance to break away. And one of the things that the pigeon doesn't have is it doesn't have the chance to break away because that's the only way they're going to get their food.
Yeah.
Um, so I think this is why I think it's really interesting. But like you say, there's a always a spectrum of these things. The spectrum of understanding the flow of to what level of manipulation can you give somebody for them to bite until they
Mm.
churn. And that is an area, a grey area. A lot of people use the term dark patterns. I think this is a grey area. It's probably a better way to think about it because it's going to vary by person. It's going to vary by your tolerance as a developer, how far you want to go down that path. But when we
Yeah.
look at this kind of level of not manipulation, in some cases manipulation, in some cases, I don't know, trying to excite people. Let's be generous. In that grey area lies a lot of difference. And that's why I think we're seeing such amount of intuification, the way that we're seeing our services reduced in quality is it's a gradual process where you're seeing people stripping away the value proposition. And to your point, AI is allowing people to understand how they can experiment with these things quickly until they can find the optimum of give you the least thing, get the most thing out of you.
Yeah. I think my general hope with all of this stuff is that, um, and I think there's historical evidence for this, that like every time we find something like this enshittification of a thing, we all just migrate to a platform, a new platform where
Yeah,
someone has taken care to make sure there is none of that rubbishy stuff,
yeah,
and we get back to like this curation thing, and then people will find new ways to like flood that platform,
yeah.
and then that platform dies because of the flood because the platform stopped caring about
Stop.
curation and started caring about volume of content.
Yeah,
And I think that's what will happen. Well, there'll be a new wave of platforms, um, and it'll all depend on which platforms that survive will be the ones that take care of their platform and make sure that there isn't a whole bunch of AI slop on their platform.
yeah.
Um, I think because we
But
kind of
that's
had
where I
this
was
with
going.
Steam.
Yeah, that's where I was going with the authenticity thing.
Yeah.
So we talked about the Disneys of the world that can effectively buy their IP and protect their IP, but we can, to a certain extent, currently, and I know there's some issues about, people doing deep fakes and stuff like that, but to a
Hmm.
certain extent, our identity, our integrity, our own personality can itself also be an incredibly important part of what preserves our responsibility. I am a human. I work with these humans. These humans did this thing. I
Yeah.
think there's still a human response to that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But at the same time, how many of us end up watching 5 minute crafts, which we know is terrible and actually dangerous in quite a lot of cases, and yet it still comes up in our feed, even if we don't want it? Or is that just me?
Yeah, no, there's quite a lot of stuff. I mean, I these days, I think if you're a content creator, which is a term it's taken me a long time to get comfortable with, but I'm clearly a content creator. Um,
What is this
I
if it's not
spend,
content?
well, yeah, exactly.
Mm.
But like I spend more time now creating content on like TikTok, for example, than I do actually consuming content on TikTok. Although inevitably, once I've finished uploading, I start a bit of a scroll, and yeah, I'm always there's always videos where I'm like, oh, um, this is like, why am I watching this? It's just rubbish. And then I'll get to like, because obviously it's showing you new stuff, but then it shows you people that you follow, and I'll get to the video that I follow, and I'm like, oh yeah, that like they're doing that cool thing, that cool skit, or that like cool, um, north of the border is like one that I quite like seeing, and I'm like, oh cool, he's making another cool thing, and then you're straight back to like trash, trash, trash. um, and I yeah, I think that I think that we're always going to see this kind of this volume, or you're gonna, I don't know how to put it. You're always going to need to curate yourself, aren't you? Really?
Yeah, totally, totally. Um, so how do I frame it? So, think what you're just describing it is there is a whole bunch of things in this world that we're facing, and it'd be
Hmm.
so easy for us to just turn around and think about doom and gloom and think about the tech bros that are taking all the cash, and I'm thinking particularly, obviously, for friends of ours who are voice actors,
Hmm.
who are literally having their voices stolen and their jobs taken from them, um, and yet. Um, the way that I think it was Denmark made it so that you have automatic copyright over your performances, something like that. I can't remember exactly what they
Yeah,
did. That's to me seems like a remedy that we can agree is a sensible thing to do. Um, Now
but they
I
also
know,
have. I saw recently China are now making like imposing rules upon content creators that you have to have, if you're making content around something specific, you
yeah,
have to have some qualification. You have to prove you have a qualification. You're a qualified person. You're qualified to speak about the stuff you're speaking about.
I kind of get that, but my worry is who decides. Who decides you're qualified? And I do understand it, but the thing is, am I
Mm.
qualified? I've got, nearly 30 years of working in games, but it's only the fact that I happen to have worked on a bunch of games means I'm a game designer. Maybe I've written a couple of books on the subject, but does that make me a game designer? Who decided that I'm a game designer? Apart from me, to be honest.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I guess what they're going to do is, if you weren't educated in it,
Hmm.
in the right way, if you didn't go to the right school and got the right piece of paper from
And
for paying for the right education,
I mean,
then it becomes a problem. I think
exactly.
if there's more than one way, I mean, maybe they will start with this, like this, that's the way you do it, and then maybe there's another way of, because I mean, I don't think you could do it in the UK, because so many people that I know in the UK, especially creatives, have had wiggly careers where they've like
But
worked
that's the joy
in
of it. The
bars and
wiggly
clubs
careers
and
is what gets us to find the dirty lint in our pockets. That's the creative juices that drives us to doing amazing things. I don't know where that
yeah,
analogy came from. It's terrible, but you forgive me, I'm sure. So, I mean, again, I'll give you another example. So, I have a real challenge with a game, Expedition 33. TerraSphere. The challenge I have with it is not the challenge I'm sure that other people have. My challenge with it is I'm dyspraxic and I can't get through the tutorial, so I can't
right,
play it. However, I respect it as a game. It won Game of the Year, and then it had a whole series of awards stripped from it because it hadn't declared it used AI.
yeah.
Where do you sit on that?
For that one in particular,
Yeah.
I personally think it's a failure of the award itself.
Mhm.
Um, if you've given the award, you've given the award. Yeah, you can make a public announcement to say we learned about this after the fact, um, and whatever, whatever, whatever. But you've given that award to a creator who has worked very hard, like, or a team that has worked very hard in order to. Yes, they might have
And
used.
create a great game, clearly.
Yeah, and yes, they might have used AI in, because from what I understand, it was mostly in the pre-production phase, which is
Yeah.
where I think you can and should use.
So
And maybe
what
there was
in
like
that case? Yeah.
one, yeah, maybe there was one file. I think from what I heard, there was one file that was like still AI work that
Yeah.
maybe was in the game, but maybe it wasn't even actually actively being used in the game, but it was in there, and it kind of showed that AI was involved.
And
But
I
either
think it's
way, I
yeah.
think that the award was given. You've
The
given
award
the
was given.
award. The award ceremony is over. The only time that you should ever, I think, retract an award is if there's some kind of like criminal situation going on. If there's some kind of law being broke,
So
it's just a rule of the awards, and
I'm a bit
they
more
they should have caught it beforehand.
conflicted. I'm a bit more
Okay.
conflicted. I'll give you because I don't know the full details, so I'm going to put some hypotheticals out here.
Hmm.
If the rules of the award specifically stated you must not submit AI, and they hid the fact that they had AI based images in there, I
Yeah,
would think that that would be grounds for a removal because it would be a breach of the rules and it would be a not maybe defrauding is too strong.
I do agree with that, but I
Yeah,
also think
yeah,
that if that's your rule,
yeah.
you should have done your homework before you handed out the award.
Oh, good point. Yeah. However, sometimes I mean, I honestly, it's very hard to tell. Sometimes
Yeah.
it depends on what's been done. Now, the next thing is the degree to which the AI is utilized. Now, clearly, that is a game that's had lots of loving art delivery to it.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not a fan for the reasons I've stated, but I know that a
Hmm.
lot of people really love that game and their art style.
Yeah.
And as you said, I think it's completely legit to use whatever tools that gets you to the point where you can test this thing out as quickly as possible. Um, if somebody had accidentally left some AI art in there, is that still hiring artists? What is the objection to the AI art in my head? Is
Yeah.
it that, and again, this is not, I'm not putting any value judgment to this. I totally get why artists who don't want there to be any AI in a game are entitled to have that view, and that's
Hmm.
fine.
Yeah.
Um, I just don't know what the intention of the use of the AI art is. Is it there to speed up a particular process? Is it because we need to get a fix done and get it out there quickly without having delays to the game, which could have cost the whole company more?
Yeah.
Is that valid? I mean, again, I'm genuinely asking. Do is it? Am I right? This is grey, isn't it? It's not. It's not black and
So
white
yeah, I
here.
mean, like I say, my opinion of it is that if you're using AI tools, and again, it's the term, isn't it? It's AI tools that
Yeah.
is the thing that everyone hates. But
What the heck do
um,
we mean by AI tools in this
yeah,
context? Yeah.
because like if you're, as an example, indies for a really long time have been using store assets or
Yeah.
free assets,
Love it.
and
Give me more.
right, and yeah, and they've used that all for like the pre-production process, and then when it comes to making the full game, they dive in, they gather in their artists, and they go, okay, cool, let's like get together and let's make this thing. So all of that stuff that they didn't make themselves is not going to be in the game. And I think this is like, it's just another, for me, it kind of feels like it's another version of that. You're having something that makes something quickly for you, or makes a process quicker for you, so you can get to a point where you're like, is it worth us doing this? Is this even good? No, it's not. Cool, bin it. You've lost next to nothing. And especially in the indie space, like we don't have massive budgets. We don't have all the time in the world and all the money in the
You
world and
have
all
a
the legal
budget?
protection. We have zero budget.
We have
So
ramen noodles in the shed. I mean, you do not have to have ramen noodles if you're an indie developer.
other
Just
noodles
obviously.
are available. But yeah, you yeah, I think if that's the use case, I don't feel there's a problem to be had with that use case. I do think, I mean, and on the flip side of it, on like the devil's advocate side of it, even if you are making a game and you're heavily using AI, and that AI, let's say you make your entire, like you're a programmer and you can't make art, so you use AI art to make your game. Cool, like you're going to release a game, but don't expect that game to be met with massive fanfare because the art is going to be generic. Um, the gameplay might stand out enough that you can get away with it being generic. You know, we've had games that are absolutely legendary and use just like the simplest of pixel shapes or simplest of shapes as art. So
Yeah. Well, I'm still a huge fan of Thomas Was Alone because
that
it
was the
was
example I was thinking of. Yeah,
phenomenal.
and so you know,
Oh, but don't confuse for a second that that wasn't simple art. I mean, Mike
no. Well,
Bithell,
this is.
yeah,
I think this is the other thing that I was kind of touching on is that like if in that game if instead of using the simple line art that he the simple line art that he
yeah,
used and had used AI art instead, it wouldn't have had the same impact
no, no.
because I think that a lot of the things that people talk about when they say how it affected them emotionally is they go, oh my god, and it was just like it's just this like little I just care so much about this thing
Hmm.
that has no discernible personality from it visually.
Yeah, and I mean, I was lucky enough back in the early days to get Mike to interview Mike on the process of getting to them. I still think the first screen he intended to have, which he changed later, was an absolute masterclass because the way it was laid out, he'd actually thought about. Yes, he couldn't do good art, whatever that means. He was
Hmm.
using blocks, of course, but he was thinking about Bauhausian architectural styling because of the way the shape, the slope that the brick was on, leading you, I think, up to an outline um, in a space that also had a counter shade that meant that it all gave you this sense of an arrow to move you without having to say a single freaking word.
Hmm.
And then they say, Thomas was alone. He'd only existed for a few seconds, but somehow that felt important. It, it still gives me shakes.
Yeah.
And I know
And
this,
honestly, if he'd have had access to AI art, I think it would have ruined it.
he would have ruined it. I
Yeah.
actually agree. I actually agree. But I'm gonna put on the hat of a hater in the nicest possible sense.
Yeah.
We have to remember that all of this AI art is using tremendous amounts of power.
Yes.
That is going on in data centers, that is utilizing large amounts of water that, whilst it is recoupable, it is a precious resource in itself. We also have to remember that the initial training assets that were leveraged to make that model operate, and the
Hmm.
additional assets that have been delivered to continue to train it since was somebody
This is
else's
where I
work.
think that the AI bubble might pop because
Yeah.
um, all of these big companies with their AI tools and it, this what feels like a race to the bottom for all of them. Um, what they're all trying to do is to convince you that you need the most powerful tool and that they are the ones that have it. And that's what they're all trying to get to. But you don't need to do that, especially like with the open versions that are available. You can create and download and make your own home version that isn't drawing from any of that kind of insane um, waste. Um, and I think if we get to a point where people can understand how to create these kind of tools for themselves locally, then that big bubble has to pop because
Hmm.
they've spent all this money and they've spent all this time making these super
I'm
powerful
kind of
tools,
with
but
that
no one's going
point,
to need
but
them.
I'm gonna try and I I have to put my green hat on occasionally. I am a former Nvidia person a long time ago,
Yeah.
and I do. My instinct of that team is that they're always doing this: increase power, tick one;
Hmm.
increase efficiency, tick two. And this pendulum motion of increased performance, increase efficiency is something I think is real. So I think to a certain extent what we're going to see is, whilst you're constantly seeing the barriers being pushed, and we haven't seen it pushed this much forever,
Yeah.
I would argue, and I think we're back to beating Moore's law. I think. I know there was a point where we weren't.
Yeah.
I think we are now again. Someone will correct us, I'm sure. Particularly with the way that they're changing the way that they create the silicon. The performance is incredible. I mean, there was a point where we never thought we'd get below 7 nanometers, and now we're like 3, which is an incredible. Is it 3 or less? Anyway, it's amazing the level of performance we're getting.
Hmm.
That is increasing efficiency. The performance per um, piece of information that's being shunted, I think, is phenomenal. I don't think I see an end to that just yet. But to your point, what is good enough?
Yeah.
And also, what can I do with the budget I've got? And given that we're currently facing, I think, still massive costs for RAM, I think we've already seeing the economics of the technology driving speed having an impact across the board. And when we have an economic downturn that we've had in games, I don't think we're going to be racing for everybody to have machines that will run a gaming experience that are always on the best, fastest possible silicon. That makes sense?
Right. Yeah.
Anyway, that's just me being very nerdy again. What a surprise! I'm being nerdy again.
See, yeah, my gut feeling is that like, um, because we all have an ear to like the volume of hype, right?
Yeah,
And there's especially on social media platforms, there's a lot of people who are using these tools. They use them regularly, and they all kind of start out in the same place. They all start out as hype man. They're all like raving about it and raving how it's like change this, change that, and then a new model comes out and they're like, oh, that was the improvements are like night and day.
yeah.
And as the years have gone on, I do feel like years are now like just changes are happening like monthly, right? I think that there's a little bit of exhaustion from these guys, but there's also, well, I preferred like version like the version that came out like last year, and I don't feel like we've made any change. Like particularly, we've just got yeah, whatever finessing is going on is not impacting the end user. And like to your point, I think that yeah, I think that that's what we're going to see, right? We're going to see people going, this is good enough. Like I don't need there's no more bells and whistles that you're providing that either I A need or B are yeah affecting my use case.
No, exactly. And also, I think we're going to see people increasingly, to your point, using their own local versions of AI in
Yeah,
order to retain a data moat, kind of like a protection of their training processes.
yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I think there's a balancing. I don't think I'm quite there yet, but I mean, with my professional side, our business has to have that. We can't afford anybody to have access to anybody else's data ever, ever. But if we want to take advantage of the techniques of large language models, we have to be able to leverage the large amounts of data that our clients will have and allow that to be useful in a way that gives insight.
I
But
think one of the cool use cases that I have seen from indie studios is this whole like um, having having a local version that runs your game design document,
yeah,
because obviously a game design document is a living, breathing document. If you're doing it right, it is, and if you can manage to keep up with like the amount of changes, because you'll have a meeting, you'll have a discussion, you're like, oh, I think we should change this about the game, we should change this storyline for the character, or whatever it is, and then you have to go and find the relevant page, you have to go do the relevant stuff. Whereas if you're using, yeah, like um, a local version, then you can just well, one, you can do the voice note thing. You can press voice and you can explain to it, we just had this meeting, we're changing this, that, and the other. Update the doc. um,
yeah,
and yeah, I think these are like the best
magic.
kind of, yeah, magic use cases.
And meeting notes, I mean, I am the worst at meeting notes anyway. It has literally
Hmm.
saved my life. But now I've got to read them.
Yeah,
That's the snag. I've actually got to read the notes.
I really like the fact that yeah, we have I think it's Read AI is the one that I think I use for meetings. because I'm really good at chatting. I'm really good at brain dumping. That's why we have this podcast. And I'm not very good at, like, at the end of any meeting, especially like some meetings could go on for an hour or more. I'm not very good at the end of that being able to go, oh, what were the action points? Like, what did we do? What did we agree on? Well, like, what did we change? So, yeah, for me, like, again, this is like another use case that's really powerful, especially for small teams, especially if you're going to have regular meetings or like morning stand-ups and stuff. Um, but yeah, I think these little moments are where I think these tools are useful for us.
Absolutely. I think that's a great place to leave it. I think bottom line for me is that we the use of predictive large language model tools or machine learning can be an incredible boon to our ability to be able to understand what's relevant, what's important, to find the signal from the noise, to be able to trigger our existing inspiration and maybe push us to try and explore other aspects, and then realize what that might look like very, very, very quickly, perhaps even test what that might look like. But at the end of the day, the craft and this art and the authentic storytelling that we bring, the vision that we bring as game makers, is a skill in itself.
Mhm.
And whilst we're also going to unlock more people to be able to make more games, we are going to face an unbearable mountain of slop as those people who don't have the patience, the passion, or the care to look after a player experience will still try it on. Hopefully we'll see the authenticity, the storytelling, the emotion, the visions stand up and get found and allow us to still get the great gaming experiences, which I think drive the reason why we work in this industry, why we love this industry, why we love making games. On that note, Stuart, what's the one thing you'd like people to take away from you, from this? Not from you personally.
To I would say, like, um, allow yourself to go through the motions. Like, you might be an artist out there, and you might be like, I'm 100% against AI. I think that that is less the case. I don't think there's that many people out there now that have that stark a vision. I think a lot of people use, especially artists, like a lot of artists come from an angle where they weren't able to express themselves with writing or whatever, for whatever reason. Maybe they weren't very good at writing, or they weren't able very good at maths calculations and stuff, and so they're using AI tools for, like, for these other things and not for art. And so I think that there is this understanding coming through that, like, there are use cases where we can be okay with this. We need to protect our art for sure, um, but I don't think by and large our art is really under threat. Um,
Yeah.
Generics, like a generic copy of something that I can do, is not the same as like what I can actually produce.
Yeah, no, totally. I think to me, it's a little bit like AI is a shovel. It's a pretty efficient shovel. It's a JCB. It can do amazing things that I wouldn't possibly be able to do on my own at scale, at speed. But it isn't a fine tool. It's not a little
Hmm.
tiny brush that will let me move the dust, I would
Yeah,
argue. And understanding the capacity of a skilled person to leverage the tools compared to an unskilled person, I think is something we need to hold on to as our hope for now. I'm not saying we'll never get to the stage where AI can go beyond that. I wouldn't be surprised if we will continue to be astounded. But to me, it's like the uncanny valley. When we were talking about 3D faces for decades,
hmm,
the better the art got, the uglier, the more obvious it was that it was wrong. I
yeah,
think we'll hit the point where AI does hit that process where it goes beyond, the weird, and starts becoming something indistinguishable. But I don't think we're there yet, and I don't think it's going to apply to everything equally. I think we will get amazing video that stops showing that. Well, in fact, we're already at the stage where we stop seeing the seven fingers, but we're not
yeah,
yet there at the moment where that Henry Cavill hasn't just suddenly morphed into a weird um, Captain Britain suit.
yeah.
Weirdly, if you know what
I
I'm
I, th- I
talking about,
also
you know what
think
I'm
it will
talking about.
always um, it would because it will always have the same output. So it will always be something that you can recognize compared to the work of an artist, I feel. Because whenever,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter who you see using these tools online, when you see the work that they're producing, you're like, oh, they're using that tool. They're using that tool. I think you're always
Yeah.
gonna be able to know when it's in use.
We will find out. I will put a bet on it at some point. I think we'll end up, but I might be talking about 20 years time and the sophistication. But even then, will it be able to have that capacity to share an idea that's human, that's connected to me as a person? And I think my bet is we're going to see more people going to folk concerts. I'm joking a little bit, but the point about a folk concert and folk music is it's a bunch of people with actual wooden instruments
Hmm.
playing with each other in a single shared space.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, we seek human contact, we seek human relatedness. It's an integral part of our identity, our personality, about who we are and what we do. And I think maybe that's why we come together with podcasts. That's maybe why we come together and gather as game developers. I don't know, let's say in UCA Farnham in the end of March. Stu, do you want to tell people a little bit about
That
GDLX?
was very good segue. Very good segue. Yeah, if you're listening to this and it's still and it's still 2026, and the 20th of March has not yet passed your calendar, then we are running GDLX, which is our Indie Games Expo. We're going to have between 50 and 60 games to showcase. We have our classic talk stages, which are the career stage and the fireside stage, hosted by Oscar. We also this year will have the new games stage, which is a stage to highlight the stories of the game developers who are actually showcasing their games. We will then also have the GDL Awards and an industry after party. If all of that sounds exciting to you, then head on over to gamedevlocal.com // GDLX to find out more and grab your tickets.
Do that now. If it's before the 20th of March, if it's after the 20th of March, haha, you missed out. It was awesome. But
you did miss out, but there's definitely going to be one next year.
there's going to be more. There's going to be more.
Yeah.
And on that note, so please, if you enjoyed this, please like, subscribe, share, and we'll be back again in a couple of weeks' time. We're doing another one of these, and there's plenty more podcasts out there for you to enjoy on the GDL podcast. But also, don't forget there's a Discord. There are other people out there. There are game makers craving to find and connect with you to make the best possible game. So go out and join them. Thank you very much for joining me, Stuart.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.